Hello everybody and welcome to Vision Fly Fishing School. Today we're gonna do some nymphmaniac stuff. We're gonna start with the basics and take a deeper dive into Euro Nymphing. It's mid-June here in Finland. We are here at beautiful Äyskoski. My name is Jarkko Suominen. I'm COO at Vision. I'm a former Team Finland captain and a former world champion. So today we're talking about Euro Nymphing. You might also know it as French nymphing, or in the US, high sticking or tight lining. Basically, it all got started way back in Polish nymphing or Czech nymphing, and in the competition fly fishing scene, it developed further and further. A lot to do with the Spanish and the French. That's where the name also comes from. And nowadays, we're talking about Euro nymphing. Next, we're going to go through the equipment we're going to use in nymphing. We're going to go through the rods, reels, lines, also some other stuff you might need. And finally, we're going to build the leaders for the nymphing setup and go through some flies. What makes a nymphing rod then? Basically, all the nymphing rods are 10 to 11 or even 12 foot long. You need the distance or the length of the rod to achieve a little bit of distance. They are soft, so you can fight the fish and you don't break the thin tippet you're using. But they have a stiff tip so that you can feel all the takes in the bottom well and especially hook the fish well. When we're talking about Vision nymphing rods, we have few characteristics that are all common to our rods. We have a specific guide spacing to all our rods. We have down-locking reel seats, so it balances the rod well. And we have snake guide on the top, so you don't get that many tangles. Here we have our new Nymphmaniac twin tip. It's an improved version of our famous Nymphmaniac rod. It has a new action, new lengths. It comes with two different tips, a sensitive tip and a power tip. It also comes in two different models with the EVA handle and the traditional cork handle. So the Nymphmaniac rod series is specifically designed for nymphing. It's a mid-price rod range. We also have nymph rods in our other rod series. We have the new Exo graphene rods, and we also have nymph rods in our entry-level Toka series and our very famous Hero series. Specifically for nymph fishing, we have three different reels. We have the XLV Nymph and Dry, XLV Nymph, and Hero Nymph. They're all designed, they have a large, wide spool so that your thin nymphing line does not get any memory. And they have a very smooth drag system so that you can easily play around with the fish. All our nymphing reels are designed so that they balance our nymphing rods perfectly, so you got a very, very balanced set when you're nymphing a long day. Also, for nymphing lines, we have three different options. We have those level Euro nymphing lines, we have the ultralight nymphing line, and we have the new Hero nymphing line. The difference between these two is that the ultralight nymphing line is a PVC free line. Then another option, we have the Nymphmaniac line, which is combination line, so to speak, hybrid line. It has a very, very long taper with a nymphing zone in front. So if you're traveling angler, you walk a lot, but you don't want to be carrying around two sets, you can tackle up with the Nymphmaniac line and you can do some nymphing with it, but you can also cast dries. Let's move on to our leader setup. We're going to use 3 components. First, high vis yellow. That's the longest section we're going to have. Then the most important part, the 2-tone indicator tippet. And finally, the actual tippet that you're going to attach your flies to. The yellow, high vis yellow, you can also substitute with just a clear monofilament. So we're going to build the leader starting from the fly line. First, 3x, we're going to have about 1.5, 2 rod lengths of this one. Then we're going to have 3x indicator, and finally 4x or 5x tippet when you're actually fishing. You always want to have your actual tippet a little bit thinner than the rest of the leader. If you break the tippet, then you're just gonna lose your fly, not your whole setup. So first, we're gonna take about 5.5 meters of the yellow tippet. It's 180, 360, 540. We have ready-made loop on the fly line, so we're gonna make a tiny loop on the end of this tippet. I'm gonna use a perfection loop. That's easy one to make. So then you can just use loop-to-loop connection and attach it to your fly line. There we go. Then we need the actual 2-tone indicator. As you can see, it is 2-tone, it changes colors. So I'm gonna take this 3 parts. Actually, that one is a little bit, so we're gonna clip it here. So here we go. We got 1, 2, 3 sections, different color sections, and we're gonna use a blood knot and attach it to the yellow line. You can attach the tippet straight to the indicator, but I prefer a tippet ring. That way, when you're changing the tippet, you're not always clipping your indicator shorter. Instead, you're just attaching it to the tippet ring. And the tippet ring you can attach with the basic clinch knot, or maybe double clinch, or improved clinch. Then finally, we're gonna take the fluorocarbon tippet and build the actual tippet that we're gonna attach the flies that we're going to use. The length of the tippet depends on the depth of the water you're fishing. You want to have about maybe 1.5 times the depth of the water you're fishing, because basically you want to have the sighter, the indicator, just above the water when you're fishing. So the tippet, it will not be straight down when you're fishing. It will be a little bit in an angle. So that's why you want to have a little bit more of the tippet than the depth of the water you're fishing. And we're gonna set up now about 1.5 meters. There we go. So, and we're gonna build the tippet for 2 flies. 2 flies is the most common way of fishing with Euro nymphs. You might go with one fly as well. Let's take 180 and then take 20 centimeters that we're going to use as a dropper. There we go. So now I have two pieces. I want to attach the dropper to my main fly or main tippet line, so that this is just one piece and the dropper is hanging down. And we actually want to have the dropper going downwards to the point fly. Otherwise, if I tie it up, yeah, it might help so that it doesn't tangle with the actual main tippet as easily. But what it creates a knot that breaks very easily, because when you hook a fish, the fish is pulling. Actually, it's always opening the knot, so you want to have it pointing downwards. And for this one, we're gonna use surgeon's knot. We're gonna have about 50 to 70 centimeters. That's a good distance between the two flies. You can have them a little bit closer if you want to. It is a little bit easier to control, but you might get more tangles, so that's why I prefer about 50 to 70 centimeters. And if you're into comb fishing, it needs to be 50 centimeters apart. So I'm going to take like about 80 centimeters apart, and then when it's going 20 centimeters down, let's do double surgeons here. There we go. And double. When you're using fluorocarbon, double surgeons is enough. If you're using monofil, do always at least 3. There we go. We moisten it. There we go. Tighten it well, and then just trim off the little tail here. So now we have ready tippet that we have dropper hanging there. And finally, we're gonna attach this to the tippet ring that we have here. And same thing again, let's do clinch here. So basically now we have tippet going to the point fly. We have a dropper for the second fly. We have our indicator, and then we have our line that we're gonna attach to our nymph line. We are moving to the water, but before we start fishing, let's have a look what's happening underneath the surface. We'll go and grab some stones and see what sort of insects do we have there, and that way we can adjust our fishing and our flies according to that. Caddis flies are pretty much the dominant species in Finland, so I'm expecting to find some of those, probably some mayflies, stoneflies as well. So let's have a look. Let's see if we can find a good size stone, like here. Some stoneflies going around, some leeches as well. Only few caddis flies, like cased caddis. Let's put it back and grab another one. So here we have quite a few caddis larvae. I think that's one thing for us to start with. So we have basically only few different patterns, but with different sizes and different colors of beads to get them to the correct depth that we're fishing. So we found some caddis on the stones, so fly something like this matches the hatch pretty well. My background is in competition fishing, that you can definitely see in my flies. All of my flies are very basic and simple patterns, easy to tie and fast to tie, but they still catch fish very well. Now the water is quite high, so I'm probably going to start with 3.5mm tungsten bead on the point, and then probably a 3mm on top. And when the water goes down during the summer, then of course you need to adjust the weight on your flies. You want to feel the bottom every now and then, but you don't want to be bouncing or snagging the bottom all the time. So you need to be adjusting the weight of your flies pretty much all the time, depending on how you move and where you fish. So the water is now quite high, and we got quite good water depth all around, good current, so there's a lot of water to fish here. I'm gonna start right here and start moving upwards, basically fishing almost the whole river. One important thing is to keep in mind that where the fish might hold, they need to have easy access to food, but they need to have shelter and place that they don't consume too much energy. So they will be holding near boulders, in deeper spots and places like that where the current is slower, and then there's steady food going by. You can see that there's stones, boulders, streams going everywhere, so there's potential places for fish all over the place. So that's why I'm pretty much covering the whole area, casting all the streams, all the pockets, everywhere. When we start fishing and start moving, it's good to proceed upstream. Basically, we need to be waiting to get close enough to the fish. We can cast maybe 10, 15 meters. 15 is very max. So we need to get close to the fish. The fish will be holding their head upstream, so best way to approach them is from downstream. So basically you want to be making your casts above you, pretty much this 90-degree sector. So you make a cast upstream, let the flies sink and drift with the current. You don't want to be pulling them, and you don't want to have them snag in the bottom either. Make a cast upstream, let the flies sink, and if you see, feel anything, then you strike. Strike, this is a small roach, but you see, you feel anything, and you strike. The first cast into a new spot is always the most important one. So what you want to do is you want to move first and cast then, so that you have your full focus and attention on the cast when you make it and the drift, so you can detect the strikes. The strikes might be very subtle, so if you make a cast and then you start stumbling, you're most likely going to miss the strike. This is a general rule, applies to everything, not just nymphing. When you're going to a new spot, it's always good to start near the banks. If the place has been quiet for a while and nobody has been there, the fish might be very, very close to the bank. So don't just go and wade over the fish. So I'm gonna start slowly moving out from here, making cast after cast, making my cast upstream and trying to get the free drift. So my line actually has just, a little bit of slack. If I'm pulling it like very tight, then I know that my flies are actually dragging a bit, which is not a good thing. I don't want to have them dragging. Now I actually have a little bit of too much weight for this slower part of water here. So I'm actually going to change to a little bit lighter flies for this calmer current, and when I get to the main current, then I'm gonna put back heavier flies again. It's important to change the flies as often as you need to have the correct weight. It might be a little bit frustrating to change the flies all the time, but if you want to succeed and catch some fish, it's important to do so. So we have a sort of short rapid here with a big strong main current, and on this side and also on the other side there's a calmer area, good amount of water, good water depth, but good current with this little bit higher water level. So a lot of the fish are most likely holding out of the main current and on the side here. So we're just gonna work our way through, starting from the bottom, going upstream, and trying to be precise and cover all the water. Säyne. A pretty nice grayling. Trying to get the fish above me, so it will, yeah. So we have this pretty big area here. It's decent for fish. Already hooked a couple of ides and now a decent grayling. It's deeper area with the sort of steady current, some big boulders on the bottom. This nice decent grayling took a pretty basic nymph orange tag, just like this. So very basic nymph orange tag with a pink bead, metallic pink bead. It's more of an irritation fly than anything else. In this place, we're just making the casts upstream, trying to get that drag-free drift, and all the time keeping an eye on the indicator. If you see anything, just strike. It's better to strike too often than too little. And since we have this sort of bigger area here, there's not really that visible structure, so you just need to work your way through, just like every centimeter, every inch at a time. So I'm just trying to get good drift, making my casts. The current is a little bit swirly, so it is hard to get exact drifts at the exact spot. So I'm just trying to get a feeling that now I had a good drift, drag-free drift, and then move forward if nothing happens. Not making too many casts at the same spot. So when we're fishing with a long rod, 10, 11 feet, it's quite difficult to fish closer to you than the actual rod length. So basically you are fishing that 3-4 meters away from you at least, and then all the way to 10 or even 15 meters. But the further you're casting, the more difficult it is to get that drag-free drift that we're looking for. So casting nymphs, it is quite different from casting a traditional fly line. With traditional fly line, it's the weight of the line that you're casting, but this setup, the actual line, it's very thin, the tippet is very thin, so you're actually just flicking the weight of the flies instead of casting traditional type of fly line. I'm using 2 nymphs at the moment. It is the most common way. If you're fishing really skinny water, not very deep, or small pockets that you can't really get a good drift with the 2 nymphs, then it is okay to use only 1 nymph as well. Some people use 3 at certain places as well, but that's a little bit trickier to fish. So that was nymph school. Now it's time for your homework. If you have any comments, questions, drop them below. See ya.